Hello and welcome to episode 2 of What's the Point? The intersection of faith and life. I am your host, John Muth, and joining me is my intrepid co-host,
Trey Fall.
We've got a great show lined up for you today. We've got an interview that we're going to cut to in just a few minutes with a guy from Pointe named Mike Brown. And Mike has shared with us his story and how Jesus has helped him through some pretty specific things. And I know it's going to be helpful for you, and it's so good to hear from Mike. So stay tuned in just a minute for that. But before we head there, Trey, what's new?
Yeah, there's not a whole lot new with me. I am wondering what's up with your face, though.
My face? Did I get something on my face?
What did you do? Why did you shave your beard?
Oh, that. Oh, I just thought it would be fun.
You've got a handlebar mustache.
I guess I was a little bored.
You look like you belong to a gang, and you're getting ready to drive a semi-truck through a bank so that the rest of the gang can come through and rob the bank. You look like the truck driver.
That's a harmful stereotype, and I don't appreciate it. No, yesterday, I was bored, I guess. I went for the Tony Stark look, and because it's a lot easier to cut off than it is to grow back. And then today, I went with the handlebar mustache, and who knows what tomorrow will bring. I don't know. I guess I don't have a lot left.
You're going to do the Mario mustache tomorrow for
I got to either work on my Mario impression or my Burt Reynolds impression. One of the two. I don't know. I'll have to ask my wife which one's better. So,
yeah. Speaking of your wife, does she like the handlebars?
She No.
No.
Not really. My kids think it's hilarious. Every time I walk by my oldest son, he just starts like snort laughing. So that's been good today. You
probably can't tell, but I shaved this morning as well.
Yeah,
all five of my facial hair.
All 5, yeah, you look great. I did want to say we had a really great response to our first show. Really appreciate people watching it or listening to it. It is live now on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and should be on Google Podcasts soon. That process takes a while. But of course, the video version is going to be and audio will be on our website. But the video goes through YouTube. So keep checking those out. The prevailing comments that I saw were in reference to you speaking to cows when you were a teenager for your job. I don't remember. But shout out to Cheryl Raymond. Hers cracked me up the most. She had this post about, she just mooed at you, basically.
Yeah, while I was preaching, she said I was mooing for you.
Oh yeah, that's I don't think that's gonna die soon. I think that's gonna live. It's gonna live for a while. As long as I keep bringing it up, I guess.
I don't know. It's kind of maybe it's a moot point.
Oh, that was
puns.
Good. That was a good one.
Thanks. I've been trying to work that in.
All right, so without any further ado,
onward and forward.
Without any further ado, let's cut to our conversation with Mike, shall we? And we're magically here with Mike. Magic Mike. Mike,
you look just like Magic Mike.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Hey, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Mike's going to share with us some of his story and what Jesus has meant to him. But first, just to start us off, Mike, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure.
Give us the basics.
Give you the basics. My name's Mike. I have a wonderful, beautiful wife named Kelsey. I have a 2.5-year-old named Madison and a 4-month-old named Harper. We live in North Attleboro. We've been going to Pointe for a few years now, and just really enjoying the church. And I work in finance, and that's me in a nutshell.
Cool. You got any hobbies? What's your number one hobby? You play the piano.
Piano. I used to play soccer until I hurt my knee, but besides that, those are my 2 things that, my wife didn't give me the permission slip to go back to soccer, so that's just piano now for the most part. Yeah.
She's probably right. I mean,
she's right, all right. Yeah.
Do you find time to play piano with Do you find time to play piano with a 2.5-year-old and a 4-month-old?
So usually it requires her sitting on my lap, my 2.5, and then her hitting the keys as I'm trying to play. But Yeah. So the answer is no. You don't really find much.
No. Yeah.
We try. I know John probably understands that.
Only late at night when everyone's asleep.
You put your headphones on. You can
That's the only time I can do stuff like that.
Right. Yeah.
That's life. It's fun. All right. Mike, why don't you just tell us some of your story, and why don't you just start at the beginning? In the beginning was Mike.
Yeah. So I would think, when I grew up going to church all the time. My parents were so instrumental in my life with introducing me to Jesus and having him in my life. So I can remember vividly always going to church growing up. But quite frankly, for most kids probably growing up, it was very much like going through the motions. So you kind of went there, you sat at church, you just kind of, tuned out. And that's probably most of my, childhood. You'd go and you'd listen and you'd sing and you'd stand up and you do all those things. But then I think when I was about 16 and 17 years old, I was in high school and just started to experience anxiety. Anxiety I've never really felt before. Couldn't really figure out why I was experiencing it. Didn't really make sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried a bunch of different things. I tried just talking to people. I tried reading up on it. I tried to just understand it more, but it became almost more crippling for me. I really didn't really want to go to school. I didn't really want to get out of bed. I just kind of felt always worried. Yeah. And that's when I really felt Jesus in my life. It was about 17 years old. I had, I can still remember it vividly. I remember talking to my mom and talking about how I just can't figure out what's going on. And she had said, well, the one thing I don't think you've done is really, gone to Jesus and prayed on it and asked for his help. And I remember going to bed. I remember sitting there quietly with my, lights out and just kind of sitting there going, dear Lord, I haven't gone to you with this and I don't really know what to do, but I'm struggling right now. And I need your help, and I'm just not in a good spot. And to this day, I'll never forget that feeling when I woke up the next morning and there was a calmness over me. And it was just
wow.
Even now I'm getting chills thinking of it. It was just oh, wow, that's unusual. That I could just feel him being yeah, you're coming to me with this right now. And I'm going to let you know I got this. And since that moment, it was a light switch went on for me. And it just changed the way changed my relationship. It wasn't more of a, I know there's a God, I believe him, but it was very much of me seeking him out, a lot more in my life than I was prior.
Wow. And that was you were still in high school at that point, correct?
Yeah. So that was about
late high school?
Yeah. So that was about 17, my junior year. And that really started to change my perspective on God and my relationship with him. And so then I started picking up the Bible more and reading the Bible, and reading a lot more books too, just Christian books, and started getting daily devotionals and just spending more time, understanding that more. And then, I'm so blessed and fortunate to have parents that are that have a strong relationship with Jesus as well. So it was so great to have these conversations with them and then go back and then, read more and ask some questions and really start to explore that more and have them as someone in under the same roof as me that I could have those conversations with.
Yeah.
Mike, what was that in the morning when you woke up? What was that? Talk a little bit more about that calmness that you experienced. Because I think a lot of people who worry or have anxiety, we pray, we say, God, we're struggling. And then sometimes it feels like he doesn't answer.
Yeah.
Or maybe he does, and we just haven't realized it. We don't know it. So dig a little deeper into what was it you were thinking? What were you feeling in that calmness?
Yeah. So I remember, I'll take you back prior days. I'd wake up and just feel tense and anxious and just in the pit of my stomach was just feeling nauseous and queasy and just unsettled. And the hardest part for anxiety I think for so many people, but I'll speak for myself, is it's hard when you don't know what it is. You can't put a finger on it. You just don't feel
sure.
it.
Yeah.
And I remember, praying that night and I remember and it was a raw emotional prayer. Just I don't have answers. I don't know what's going on. I just need you. I need help. And waking up that morning, the calmness I felt was it really felt like his arms were around me in a sense of I didn't feel a sense of anxiousness. I felt calm. I actually felt just real genuine peace in my heart. I was just wow, it just was unique. I remember waking up and being like, what is this? Like, this is so interesting. Like, I'm like, I feel good. Like, I really do feel good. And it felt like whatever was burdening me was just like taken off my shoulders. And I completely felt a sense of just like, it was like he needed me to get, when you look back at it, you laugh, but it's like he needed me to get to where I was. So at the moment when I went to him, it was so clear that he's like, Mike, I've been here with you the whole time, and you're asking, and I'm going to deliver on this for you right now. And it was like the spark I needed to just be like, yeah, I mean, he's making that immediate impact in my life right away.
Wow.
Yeah.
That reminds me, I've heard several people say before, you don't know God's your only hope until he's your only hope. And almost like you got to get to that point of where he's the only answer, the only thing that could possibly, pull us out of, whatever it is we're experiencing. I got goosebumps as you were sharing that.
Yeah, it was like it was such an important moment in my life when I think back on it. And what was just like a really cool moment too was I was baptized, obviously as a child, but then made the decision to be baptized again a couple of years ago. And without even knowing it, when I was in high school, I wrote it down. I think I wrote it down for school. So I wrote down the beginning of my testimony, and I didn't know that my parents still kept it. So I asked my parents to baptize me, and I didn't know. My mom pulled out a piece of paper and read this, and read my testimony that I wrote in high school that I didn't even know I did. And I cried like a girl, but I shouldn't say girl. Like I cried like one of my daughters, I should say.
Hey, Trey was talking about harmful stereotypes before you got on here. He was making fun of my handlebar mustache. He said I looked like I was going to rob a bank with a gang.
Like Hulk Hogan. Looks like Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, that's what I said. Okay, brother. Brother. I've been doing that all morning. Brother.
So you started. So let me try and piece the timeline together. You wrote after you experienced this calmness with God. That's when you wrote down that you wanted to get baptized again?
No, so I just wrote down like that moment in my life of, I guess I don't remember doing any of it. I just wrote down then like, this is my relationship with God. This is what happened in my life. This is the anxiety. This is what happened. And it's changed my relationship with Jesus. And then my mom happened to take that out a couple of years ago
Cool. Your mom read your journal?
You read my journal.
That's a violation.
Yeah.
Mom, get out of my room.
Mom, come on. So yeah, it was just like amazing. Like I didn't even know I did it. And she just started, she's like, yeah, I kept this all these years. And I thought, I'm going to want to keep that forever, because at the time you write it and then you don't even realize how special and like pivotal that is in your life, that moment that you had changed the way that your relationship with Jesus, the relationship with others, how I raise my kids, like all that stuff is so pivotal now.
I think it's so cool. Like moments like that happen initially for people who follow Jesus, and everybody's story is different. Sometimes for people it's like a drastic thing. Sometimes it's a bunch of little things that God does. But I think when you really think about it, like you can see how God worked, and looking back and like for me, he keeps doing things like that. There's things that I can point to. It's like, this is a pivotal moment in my life. This is where God really showed up. And those kind of stories and things keep happening. And it causes me to grow closer to him and just want to pursue him.
Right. Me too.
More deeply.
Mike, when you said you started reading, I'm throwing you a curveball here. You said you started reading a lot of books. Name the most influential book outside of the Bible that was helpful for you.
A lot of it for me. So that's a really great question. Like I read it like the Prayer of Jabez, and I started reading all these like small little books that were just like little prayers about in the Bible that were taken out. My mom was just amazing at like for birthdays and Christmases. She'd be like, here's another devotional. Like if I were to go upstairs right now, I have devotionals was something that like I really sunk my teeth into, and I would think back at like I would read something, whatever it may be. Like I look back now at some of the verses I'll read in the Bible about anxiety and casting and giving it to Jesus. And then I would just spend time and read up more on like little sections like that. And I remember like I decided about 17 or 18, I wanted to read the whole Bible. So like I decided every day I was just going to read a chapter, and I just went through that and like picked out things and just kind of read through it. And obviously it's a lot to kind of take in, but I can't necessarily name like a specific one like off the top of my head. I think of like now in my life, like I really enjoy like Andy Stanley and Charles Stanley and Joyce Meyer and a few of them. Like to me, I just, whether it's I'm listening to it on my ride to work or at home, or I'm watching some of this stuff on YouTube.
You mean your walk up the stairs?
Yeah, my walk up the stairs. I still got to go into work. We're essentials. I'm still driving in.
Oh, you are? I thought you were working home more.
Yeah, we're still going in. Yeah, so I'm blessed right now that we're considered essential, right? So I'm praying for so many people that are at home right now or out of work, but we're still going in and trying to be safe and but still going in. I'll tell you that it's phenomenal. There's none. So
you're talking about traffic? Is that what you said?
No traffic whatsoever. It's
oh, I'm sure.
Easy ride in, easy ride out.
Unprecedented in Boston.
It is.
So have you had the opportunity to help others with anxiety throughout the years?
Yeah. So what happened to me is like, this was, I think, pivotal as I kind of like experienced something as challenging as anxiety. Because I want to make it known though, is even though like I experienced anxiety in high school, it didn't mean it went away, right? Like the stress and anxieties that are there a lot in our lives. And I don't think, sometimes I'd feel like defeated if I'm like, oh, how come I'm not giving this to Jesus yet? And you're like, well, that's growth and that's just life. So with that came like empathy and sympathy and understanding for others in general. And I think like the first thing that comes to mind was my wife. So my wife, Kelsey, just an amazing person that she's just a sweetheart, a fun, go-loving person. And she started to get postpartum anxiety after our first child was born, Madison. And I remember thinking like, I'm so blessed and so fortunate to experience anxiety so I can relate to her and help like, not necessarily like, cause a lot of anxiety is like irrational thoughts, but so like not necessarily connecting the pieces on her thoughts, but just to be there with her and to be like, I know this may not make sense, but I've experienced these same sensations and feelings and just, anxieties, and to be able to relate to her has been great. I've had conversations with people in the church parking lot about anxiety, and just about how it's affected them and, parts of the Bible that I lean on and just being able to like, I think when we start looking at our trials and tribulations as ways that we can help others, it's helped me to change my mindset on anxiety a little bit. It's really helped me to think of it as more of a connector to other people than just a burden in my life.
That's really good.
That's awesome. Apostle Paul, and I can't remember 1st or 2nd Corinthians, he talks about, boasting in your weakness, because when you boast in your weakness, then God's power is made perfect. And if you had kept that anxiety to yourself, you wouldn't have had that opportunity.
Right.
And I just commend you. And I think it's awesome that, when you said, I'm thankful that I went through it so I could help Kelsey. That's a classic example of God's power being perfected in weakness. And I love it. I really honor you for that. That's awesome.
Thanks, man. Yeah. And it's just, you'll find like whether it's at work too, and just other times where you'll just bump into some people and you have a conversation and then you realize, I think anxiety is one of those things that people consider a weakness. And then you start to talk to others about it and they're like, oh, I experienced that too. I'm struggling with this. And it's all walks of life. It's whether someone, has kids, no kids, certain jobs, whatever, it doesn't matter. And you're like, I experience things just like you do. And it's just, for me, it's like, and then it just, to me, I can give that testimony around, like, it's had such a major, like, God's impact on that in my life has been so powerful. Like, that's why I love sharing it, because I want others to feel that sense of it too.
Yeah, that's good, man.
Definitely.
That's good. I just a question. I've had to talk with friends and family members who have anxiety, and that's something I haven't necessarily experienced firsthand. So what's some of your advice for people who are caring for or helping somebody with anxiety? Because sometimes, we put our foot in our mouth when we say something really stupid. What's the advice for that?
That's a really good question. And I'll give you like my perspective on it. Cause I think if you don't experience anxiety, it's kind of hard to relate to it. You're kind of like,
sure.
What's keeping you up at night? I don't get it. Just like, it's okay. And, for me, like the best thing I can get, like if you have someone in your life that experiences anxiety, it's just to be there with them. We're not always, there always isn't a solution to the problem. It's not always, just do this, right? Because people that experience anxiety, sometimes it's the battle of the mind, and that's a really good book, Battlefield of the Mind, that actually, you just may think that's a book that's really changed my life, is Battlefield of the Mind. But I think of like my wife, and just allowing people to have a conversation out loud. Sometimes the things that are in our head are worse than what we give them less power once we say it out loud. So whether it's a family member or a friend that's going through some anxiety, like to be there and cast no judgment on it and just say, hey, what's on your mind? And I've read up on different things around, there's two different worlds we can live in, Trey. Like there's a world of possibility or probability. So, it's possible that I get on a plane and something bad happens. It's probable it's not. So which world do I want to live in? And a lot of people with anxiety will live in the world of possible instead of probable. So you start talking to them around these anxieties, and they're living in this like it's going to happen, and just let them talk about it and pray for them and comfort them. And my wife and I, like, we'll both notice if we're having a moment and just say, hey, like, do you want to go for a walk? Do you want to go for a ride in the car? Like, do you want to just disconnect for a minute? Because the world we live in does not prompt us to slow down, and it doesn't prompt us to spend time with Jesus, and it doesn't prompt us to read. And you kind of it's great to have Kelsey in my life, and we all to have people in your life that can kind of recognize that and say, hey, let's pump the brakes for a second. Like, I can see you getting off course, or I can see that you're starting to snowball, and to say, like, why don't you go do some of the things that calm you down right now, or help you slow down, because that can help you just to reset yourself.
Yeah, it's good.
That's so good, man. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Of course.
And yeah, man, it's just been really good it's good to see your face.
Good to see you guys too. It's been a while,
I miss you.
John, I love the renditions, the remix songs you have at the end of on church on Sundays. Those always get me laughing.
Well, I only did a few of those. I don't know. At one point you're just done making fun of our current situation and making jokes about it.
Yeah, but it does put a smile on people's face. I'm excited. I'm excited to get back to church once we can do that. It'll be great to see everybody. And I think of even like we just talked about the trials, Trey, and I think about like what we're going through now for me is like helping me to kind of get rid of some of the junk in my life and realize what's important, right? And not take the simplest things for granted, like a haircut, like those little things that we kind of laugh about. But you're like, man, like there's so many good things in our life right now that when we slow down and spend time with our families, like I'm excited to get back. And in a good way, I almost think I kind of want to have a level of like some kind of remembrance of this, not to be fearful of it, but just to be like, when life gets going and things get crazy, be like, hold on, remember when things we slowed down and we focused on people and their mental health and their physical health and how they're doing and who we can pick groceries up for? Like, I hope more of us keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what it really comes down to.
For sure.
Yeah, it's good.
All right. Well, that is all the time we have today for episode 2 of What's the Point? The intersection of faith and life. Thank you for watching or listening. As we said last week, if you have any questions that you want us to talk about on the show, or any topics that you want us to consider discussing, email those to info@crosspointma.org. That's Crosspoint with an E. I forget the E. Crosspointma.org. And once again, thank you guys. Well, Trey, you have to be here because you're my co-host. Thank you, Mike, again for sharing with us today. And what were you gonna say? Something?
Happy to be here.
Oh, okay.
It's more like your cow host.
Your cow host. Stop with the moo. Stop with the cow puns, Trey. You should have saved that for next week. Then we could have a cow pun every week. You're gonna run out.
Sorry.
All right. Maybe not next. So join us next time, where we yet again attempt to answer the question, what's the point?
What's the point?
What's the point?
And action.
Hello and welcome to episode 2 of What's the Point? Why are you laughing? Why are you laughing?
I was laughing at you. Okay.
Why are you laughing at me?
Because you were smirking at my action.
So you were really laughing at yourself.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I was laughing at you laughing at me.
Oh, okay. That happens.